Do you think your network isn't working? This episode unpacks why your referrals have dried up and how to build a business that runs on trust, not transactions. Frank Agin is the founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, a referral-focused networking organization that helps small businesses grow through trusted professional relationships. He's a lawyer by training and a CPA by background. Frank pivoted from corporate tax consulting to entrepreneurship over 25 years ago after realizing that connection, not compliance, was his real passion. Through AmSpirit, his podcast, Networking RX, and multiple books on relationship building, Frank has become a go-to voice for professionals who want to build their voice and business through real human connections, not cold pitches. Frank, it's been a long time coming. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah, no, this is take two. The audience doesn't know we tried to do this once and ran into some technical issues. So there's only the Atlantics separating us, right?
And technology, more at the point.
Yeah,
technology. So I have to, if the audience are watching along on this, I've been featured on Frank's fantastic podcast twice now. So many thanks to you for having me on the show. And finally, I realized that my podcast that I'm currently running was a great fit for you as well, because you have an interesting background and story. And as we discuss a lot on this show, we might not get where we thought we were going to be, but we certainly end up where we're meant to. And I'm looking forward to digging into a little bit of that journey of yours, Frank, today. Because to be honest, it's not something we've ever spoke about privately either. So it'd be interesting to understand a bit more about your journey. You started in law and accounting. Why would you do that to yourself, Frank?
Well, no, it's a good question. I ask myself that question all the time. My dad asked me that question too. Can't believe you ever did that. That's so not you. My dad was a professor. My mom was an educator. And so I grew up in a household where do well, that's the ticket. And so you go off to college and you do well, and you need to, go to grad school, go on. And I'm like, well, I'll go to law school. I'll, go get an MBA. I'll get a professional degree. I'll get an advanced degree. And then it's kind of a fallacy. You think, the more you move up, the more your opportunities. And in many ways, it really kind of narrows them. You start to pigeonhole yourself. You're taking a lot of tax classes, and then you're kind of, you're earmarked as a tax person. It's like, oh, that's how this is supposed to work. And then you get out there, you get the offer letter, and I'm making good money, and wow, this is great. And then after a while, you realize, okay, this isn't fun. This can't be the next 40 years of my life. So that's how it really all began. And I think that story is similar for a lot of people, because when we're coming out of, in the United States, high school, going on to college, it's like you need to start making these life decisions. You don't really even know what you want to do.
No.
So that's how I ended up in that.
What was the moment? Was there a trigger for you when enough was enough?
Yeah, it was a couple years in, there was a trigger, but I was smart enough to know that, I need to plan. I can't just leave. I need to have a plan. I need to know where I want to go. I was always been very entrepreneurial. As a kid, I would sell, we lived in a tourist area. I would sell worms, right? Night crawlers, we call them. Basically have a sign on the road, and people would pay 35 cents a dozen, or 3 dozens for $1, or 3 dozen for $1, or something like that. And so I was very entrepreneurial, and I knew that I kind of wanted to control my own destiny. And so I planned, figuring, okay, I have this law degree, and I don't hate being a lawyer. And there's lots of different things that you can do being a lawyer. Here's tax, here's all the stuff, right? Here's all the business stuff. And some of it's, really kind of exciting. And so probably about 6 years into it, I finally just said, okay, I've got to do this. Because at some point you have to make the leap, right? You've been there. I know I want to. It's never simple, right? Where you're just leaving and all of a sudden you're replacing your income overnight. It's never that simple. I left, and I tell people that a funny thing happened to me when I went into what I call the private practice of law. And the funny thing was that nothing happened. I had no idea how to get clients. They don't teach you that. I just figured I've got this experience, a great experience. I had these credentials. I had a law degree. I had a graduate business degree. I had a certified public accounting degree or certification. Who wouldn't want me? Who would want to take me on, right? To help them. is right, because I didn't have all the overhead of the big firm. And, it just didn't happen. It's not supposed to. But I had lunch one day with a friend, and I was just kind of lamenting, where I was at. And she had taken a different path out of law school and had started her own firm. So she didn't really have an income to replace. She could just, right from the beginning, start to build this thing up. And I just said, how do I get to where you're at? And she just gave me some suggestions. One of the suggestions was get into a tips club or a leads group, like a BNI. And I really had no idea what she was talking about. But there was an organization that was just starting groups here in the Columbus, where I'm at, Columbus, Ohio, central part of the United States. It wasn't BNI. It was very similar to BNI. I went to a meeting, and it made total sense that I could lift my whole world up just helping other people. Networking, right? I had no idea what networking was. And I took to it like a fish to water, because it's so easy for me to promote other people and just painful to self-promote. It's just hard. And that's not true of everybody, but most people don't want to spend a whole lot of time self-promoting. You really put yourself at risk of either sounding obnoxious or being challenged. And so I had, got into this organization. It was it wasn't an overnight success, but I at least I had a plan at that point. I could start to work this group. I could start to build these relationships. And make a long story short, it was probably another 6 years, but I had the opportunity to buy the organization, and I did. And so and at that point I said, I enjoy practicing law, but there are new attorneys are graduating every year, thousands of them. And there's nothing unique about it. And you're really not building anything. You're getting clients and you're serving clients. With the networking organization, which you've mentioned is called AmSpirit Business Connections, I can build something. I can create content that has meaning, and it's just, you're building a brand, you're building a following. So
I think that's true for anybody who works in what are typically quite the undifferentiated spaces, right? Nobody comes to a lawyer because they've got nice problems, right? Nobody comes to an accountant because they love the idea of having an accountant. Nobody, there are necessary evils in the world, and unfortunately, lawyers and accountants and such are in that boat. We couldn't live without them, but they're absolutely really tough to differentiate. And I guess you meet some fascinating people, I've no doubt. But like in those early days, like I'm guessing imposter syndrome and the fear that you weren't enough must have been quite heavy on your shoulders, right?
Well, sure. I think that's always there, because none of us have the same experiences. And so the second you hear about somebody else's experience, it's like, ooh, I've done this and this, but I didn't do this, and we just assume they've done all these other things. In reality, this might have been the only thing they've ever done. And they're looking at us saying, wow, here's all this stuff I haven't done. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly the whole notion of imposter syndrome. I mean, I still run into it. I look at other people, and I think the internet lends itself well to fueling those sorts of feelings. And you just have to realize, okay, I hear what they're saying. Chances are they didn't do that in 6 months. They just didn't, I don't have time to check.
Picture.
Yeah. I don't have the time to check. I don't want to take the time. It doesn't matter. I'm doing what I need to do.
So you talked earlier about the good feeling, the lifting yourself up. I think you described it as through networking. For those people who are watching along, we were fortunate enough a few weeks ago to have the fantastic Bob Berg on the show, right? So I'm absolutely, anybody who listens to me talk knows that I'm in on what you're talking about to hear. I love it. I love adding that value, helping people, networking. What were your worries when you first started out on that trip though? Because at the beginning, we all kind of have this concern that, or I think most people do, that we don't have anything to give in return. We're networking with people, but what's my value that I'm going to add other than the obvious?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that people need to come to grips with, is that we do have value. I mean, I tell people all the time, the biggest thing you have to offer to your network is your network itself, right? I mean, it's like I've introduced you to people, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it's like I know that there are people in my world that could help you and you could help them. And so I'm going to try and make those introductions. Doesn't cost me anything. I could be the broker, right? Hey, Paul, if I'm going to connect you with Marlies, you guys have your conversation through me. Well, that's a waste of time, and nobody wants to deal like that. So it's just easier to kind of make the connections. But in time, you start to realize that you do have things to offer. It's, well, I've had this experience, this one and this one, but not this. I can help somebody with these experiences and they can help me with this. And a lot of times people look at networking as kind of this, you hear the notion you need to give before you get. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense because I'll end up broke. It's like, well, no, you're giving away things that are replaceable or that don't deplete you. Giving somebody information or making a connection for somebody, it doesn't deplete me. I'm just sharing what I have. Whereas if you're giving money, then yeah, you're going to be depleted, so it's just kind of coming to just realizing that you have these things in your life. You have experiences, you have connections, and those are real value that you can hand out to other people.
So as you went along building that, I guess you could call it a community, right? Network or community,
Yeah.
whatever you want to class it as. Coming from the background that you had, and we all know that lawyers and accountants traditionally earn quite good money. It's far from a poor man's trade or a poor woman's trade. Was there a time when you just kind of sat there and thought, what am I doing? I should go back and be a lawyer, because the money's much better than what I'm doing now, or there was a more defined career path. And if I'd stayed as a partner I could have made partner by now, or what were your thoughts on were the moments of doubt? Special shout out in today's episode for our charity partners, ADHD Liberty, led by Sarah Templeton, who are part of the fight to prevent the school to prison pipeline for ADHD and neurodiverse individuals. If you'd like to find out more, you can visit them. The show links are in the notes below, and I would encourage you to go along and have a look and educate yourself on their fight. It's an incredibly important cause, and we're super proud to have them as charity partners for the MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers podcast. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your episode.
Well, there have always been moments of doubt. Yeah, there were moments of doubt early on. Really early on there were, because I had spent enough time doing taxes that I had a real specialization. I had a real skill set that was and still is in demand. I mean, my skill set's gone. It's atrophied. The laws have changed. But at that time, there was a real skill set, and I had companies reaching out saying, we understand you're available. Would you be interested in coming to work? And you have to do a little bit of soul searching and say, okay, are you going to be happy? And the answer is no, I'm not going to be happy. I'll be happy on payday, but payday comes depending upon where you're at, once a month, once every other week. I don't
even think we're happy on payday. Honestly, I don't even think we're happy on payday. You don't even notice it come in.
Yeah,
you don't even notice it come in. There's no worry that it's going to come in. I guess that is a bonus of being in one of those kind of jobs. Yeah. Like, I don't really worry that I'm going to lose my job until it actually happens. Let's be fair. Yeah. It does happen. But now you're a master of your own destiny, and the power to prevent that happening's in your grasp. And I love, certainly from my perspective, I think that's huge for me. Marketing through referrals then. Talk us through, what's your approach to referral-based marketing?
Well, I think for me, number one, you have to be willing to help other people. You have to be willing to add value to other people. That's the first thing. And we've kind of already talked about, there's lots of ways you can add value. The second thing you need to do is you need to be really clear on the types of things that you want. Who are the people you serve, and when do you serve them, and letting the people around you know that. And to be honest, Paul, I think that's probably the biggest mistake or the biggest problem people run into is they assume that everybody understands what they're about, and people don't. And people are just too nice to say anything. I was talking to a human relations person last week, consultant, had their own business. And, I'm an HR person. And she just kind of talked in these terms and just assumed that I would catch on to them. And I pushed back on her. Well, I explained to her, I said, I want to help you. I like you, but I don't understand what you mean. And you have all these stories you can tell that can help paint a picture for how I could refer you. But you choose to tell all these stories in one 30-second commercial. And my brain doesn't hang on to that one 30-second commercial. But if you tell me a couple of these stories, my brain will hang on to those. And her response is, well, how do I know what stories to tell? And, what if I tell these three and really the opportunity is the fourth? Well, that's a risk you run. But when you're doing the blanket 30-second commercial, I miss everything. So you might as well take a chance on these. And the reality is, when you go to a networking event, somebody asks, what do? You need to be ready with an answer, right? This is what Javelin's all about, blah, 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 blah. And you feel like, okay, I've missed the opportunity. In reality, nobody does business on that first meeting anyway, right? It's the second meeting. It's the third meeting where you're really getting to know one another. And that's when you have the opportunity to kind of really dial into the stories, Well, as an attorney, these are the kinds of things I do, Oh, I didn't realize that. And, I didn't realize that was part of being a lawyer. Everyone thinks going to court is what lawyers do, and most don't. So that's, really the second piece of getting for marketing for referrals. And then the third thing is that you need to educate your network on how to talk about you when you're not there, So, Paul, I like you, right? And you've told me about Javelin and get a sense as to what you're looking for. If I come across somebody that's a good fit for you, me liking you is in my heart, me knowing what you're about is in my head. But until something comes out of my mouth and says, you know what, there's a guy I need to introduce you to. Let me tell you a little about him. That's kind of the last piece. Then that's what makes the referral happen. So it's really those three things that need to happen.
And I think a lot of the time we probably have an idea that's what we need to do, but then people back off from that because it feels, I don't know, it feels a bit uncomfortable to do that because it kind of feels like you're asking of people, but you are. The thing that people don't realize is that quite a lot of the time, if you've been doing good in the world, people want to help you. You're not asking them of something like it. You're allowing them to be reciprocal, if I can say my words. You're allowing them that ability to be gracious of the introductions you've probably already made for them, the help you've already provided. Now let them help you because they do actually want to help you. Most people do. But to your point, you've got to give them the toolkit that understands. So I'll use an example. A good friend of mine, referral partner of mine, she's a branding lady. So she helps people with their brand messaging, their graphic design. And I said to her, look, tell me who your ideal audience are. And she gave me this really broad, generic description of could be any audience. I was like, that's great, but there's nothing sticking in here. Like, you need to go deeper.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, well, this type of people. I was like, you're closer to the mark. What do they have for breakfast? And she's like, what? I was like, what do they have for breakfast? And she was like, I don't know what you mean. What's that got to do with anything? I was like, well, really, it's got nothing to do with anything, but it's also the sort of level that you need to be going to here. Like, who are these people? How will I know that I've got one of your people in front of me when they're standing staring me in the face? What things are they saying that I can go, I remember Floss said I had to keep an eye out for that. Or I had to remember that Steve said I had to keep an eye out for that. Or whatever. Those are the conversations that we can go, you've been sent to me for a reason. Like, we're connected for a reason. I'm going to make an introduction because you've said the magic phrase. And that conviction on my behalf as the referrer is equally as important, right? Like, exactly what you said earlier on. Well, I can introduce you to Frank. Frank does, I don't know what he does. Oh, well, he does some networking kind of stuff. And he helped. Oh, I don't want that intro. If I'm the other person on the other end, I'm going, no thanks, Paul. I don't really want that intro. So I think that is, for me, key. And I know that's kind of core to what you're like. How do you help people understand how to get to the core of that message, though? Because I'd imagine that's something you help people with quite a lot, is how do you decide what to put in your elevator pitch?
Well, it's funny because I bring up the notion that people do a poor job of talking about themselves, and everybody laughs like, oh, you are right. They are all horrible. And my response is, yes, we are all horrible. I'm horrible. You're horrible. We're all horrible. We all do a poor job of it. And so, I own it. I need to do a better job, and I constantly have to work on it. Okay, why did I say it that way? I should have said it this way, So it's a work in progress, and we come by it honestly because, like you with Javelin, I mean, you're probably working and thinking about Javelin 16, 17 hours a day, right? Even with your family, things are going on in your mind. It's so you really understand it. And the average person only thinks about it when you're talking to them, right? For that little bit of time. And then they've got their other things to think about. And so, I knew this when I practiced law. I was just like, okay, everybody's got to understand this, right? I know all this stuff. They must know all this stuff. In reality, they don't know any of it. So, you ask the question, how do I, start? I just start by get other people. What's happening with other people is, don't be ashamed. No, be optimistic, because there's so much potential for you to improve. So much potential.
So, AmSpirit. Tell me about AmSpirit.
Yeah, well, it's hard for me to compare because I've never been in other organizations, but I do know what we're passionate about, and it's referrals. I'm not worried about growing groups to be huge. I'm worried about to make sure the people in the organization have a successful experience. And so myself and my franchisees who are out there, people who are working with groups, people who are in groups and helping within groups, we talk through essentially what I just went through on here. It's like, okay, it's easy to build a relationship. We're all really good at that. We're humans for the most part. Now let's really hone in on our messaging, And one member said to me, yeah, if he told the rest of the people in the group, if I don't understand what you're saying, I feel dumb, and I can't refer you if I feel dumb. So I need to be very confident of what you're about. So let's have a conversation. So is that our differentiator? I don't know, but I just know that we're all very passionate about it. There are lots of different types of networking groups out there. The people who come to us are the people who want referrals. So we need to really lean into being super proficient at helping people understand how they work. Not everybody will take the time, but a lot of people do. And those are the people we serve.
Amazing. And if you're looking at someone who's just joined AmSpirit and perhaps doing a bit of critique and a bit of troubleshooting to help them take that first step,
what I tell people is stop trying to have that one super awesome 30-second commercial that just flows off your tongue, right? Don't worry about that. I want you to have 50 that are mediocre, that every week can come in and kind of tell a different story. This week, I'm talking about this flavor of ice cream. This week, I'm talking about another flavor, and and every week have a rotation of different things you're talking about. And then when you've through the rotation, start all over again. Because the way the human brain works is it hangs on to all those little stories. One of the things I do is I'll go into groups, I'll bring a Rubik's Cube. You know what a Rubik's Cube is, right? I've never solved a Rubik's Cube. And the reason I've never there you go. Yep. I've never solved it because I haven't committed the time. Now, there are ways of doing it. You can look online, you can figure it out. And if you pay me $10,000, I will learn how to do a Rubik's Cube. But if you're not going to incentivize me to figure out a Rubik's Cube, I won't do it. And so what I tell people is when you come at somebody with that 30-second commercial, as you illustrated, where the person was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What that person was saying to you is, Paul, here's a Rubik's Cube, solve it. And you're like, I'm not going to waste, I'm not going to devote time to it. So I tell people you need to simplify it. You need to give things that just stick in people's brains. And so have all these different commercials that you can come up with. And actually, we've done some things with AI that people can kind of have a conversation about hey, this is what I do. And the AI will come back and say, well, here's some messaging. Can you give me a website to look at? And it'll, do you want me to make commercials for you? Yeah. Here's 36 commercials. So we're all about referrals.
And what you've said really aligns with my world as well, rightly, because that's why I love video, because video helps people tell those little snippets. We spend so much time worrying about, as you said, you've said so many honest, candid things today, Frank. And I love that about you is, I can't refer people because I feel too dumb because I didn't understand what you said. That takes a brave person to admit that or be even conscious that they've done that. Although plenty of us will do that exact thing. And, the more times you tell your story to the world, the better you'll refine it. You'll understand which audiences like that story, which version you need to tell to different people, which bits to put in, which bits to take out. And it's a constantly evolving thing. But people spend so much time trying to get that. And I deal with that. Paul, I've recorded my elevator pitch for the website and I've done it 14 times. I can't get it right. What's going on? I'm like, you're trying to go straight in at the deep end. You can't possibly try and do that the first time on video, right? You've got to figure it out bit by bit. Networking, telling the story, telling who you are. And don't be shy of bringing that personal level into it as well. I go into a networking group, I tell them, what do you do, Paul? Well, first of all, I get very little sleep because I've got 2 young boys. One of them's just had the side guide rails taken off his cot, so he spends most of the day running in and out of my bedroom trying to keep me awake. And the other one, he comes up with conjures ideas up as to why he needs to come downstairs after I put him to bed, right? So excuse me if I don't make much sense in the networking session today, because I probably had about 3 hours last night. Thanks, kids. But that sticks. Oh, Paul's the guy with the crazy kids. Yeah. I'm a bit crazy myself, to be fair, but we'll get to that later. Yeah. Frank, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I always love it when I've got folks like yourself on, because it does generally feel more like a conversation than an interview or a podcast. So thank you very much for coming along. If folks want to find out more about AmSpirit, I will make sure I put all the links in the show notes. So please do read down, scroll, click. Frank's fantastic. I can vouch firsthand for his top-notch referrals and networking abilities. And I'm sure that the groups are every bit as powerful as his connections are. So definitely have a think about that and look into it. Frank, what's one thing you'd leave the audience with for this week's episode?
Well, let me give you 2 quick things. One, the best way to get yourself networked is get out there and volunteer. Find something that you're interested in and go ahead and volunteer, because you're going to feel good about it, but you're going to be with other people that you don't know who are interested in the same things. And they're going to think that, they're going to know that you're a good person. And then you just need to educate them. But the second thing I'll say is I'm releasing a number of audiobooks. And I have a series of free download codes off of Audible and Amazon that are only good in the UK. I don't know a ton of people in the UK, so I have all these codes. So if somebody would like free books, I'm happy to give them codes.
So if you're interested in that, connect with Frank, drop him a line, and he will absolutely drop those over to you. Frank, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for being a great guest. We'll have to have you back again. Take care. Thanks for watching along at home. Make sure to hit the button, subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to feature on a future show, or you've got some ideas for folks who would make a great guest, please drop us a line. Contact details are in the show notes, and I'd love to hear from you. Your host today was me, Paul Banks, founder at Javelin Content Management. Here at Javelin, we specialise in helping busy business owners just like you to repurpose video content, taking all the stress and tech problems away and turning your long-form video into literally hundreds of pieces of content without breaking the bank. We describe it as getting ideas out of your head into video and out to your socials. If you want to launch your personal brand, become the vendor of choice for your audience, or maximise your sales revenue impact, we'd love to hear from you. Join us next Wednesday for the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a review. Our podcast is only possible with your continued support.